Thank you so much for being here today, guys. You were so much fun in the chat earlier. But right now, we're going to talk about introduction to generative AI and Copilot. I'm so excited about my two guests here, but they're going to tell you a little bit about themselves in just a moment. I'm going to.
Two is next week. So a week from today is our session 2. So anyway, my name's Kim Snyder, 3DPO. We don't have to spend time on what that title means, but basically a lot to do with data and portfolio management. And my colleague,
Destiny Bowers, VCIO and VCISO. So basically technology, advice, security, and a lot of cloud-based stuff, and a little AI and Copilot and potato salad recipes too.
Yeah, she's quite a chef, actually. We're both from Roundtable Technology, and we are very grateful to partner with TechSoup and Microsoft on this presentation today. So what are we talking about today? Okay, we're going to talk about generative AI. This is an introductory overview course. So if your AI is new to you, you are in the right place. Also going to spend some time talking about responsible AI and how to use AI in a way that you can mitigate some of the risks that you hear people talking about when they talk about AI. We're going to be focusing today on Microsoft Copilot. This is a course from Microsoft. We are focused on that tool. And so that's where is going to be our focus. And also looking at some use cases. So how are some nonprofits using Microsoft Copilot? And then we have allotted time at the end for Q&A. So you can always drop your questions in. Our friends from TechSoup are great at identifying some of the key questions, or save them to the end, and there will be time for you to ask them. All right, and here's the thing. Any kind of tech presentation, especially AI, it's easy to lapse into jargonese, okay? We don't want to do that. We want to do this in a human-centered way. If perchance we start talking in acronyms or using words that don't make any sense, or even that you maybe think you know, but you have questions about, just drop a little hashtag jargon into the chat. We will stop and explain what we're talking about in English. All right, so question number 1, and this is a poll, and I believe, Kevin, you have the mighty powers to launch this. But what is your current relationship with AI? Is it, there's the poll up. Were you able to launch it?
Launching it right now.
There it goes. Okay, cool, great. Are you beginner? Just new to it? Exploring, right? So you tried a little, maybe experimenting. So you've used it regularly, and incorporating it into your projects, or you are an advocate. You are kind of spreading the word on AI in your organization. So interesting. We've got
some experimenters, we've got some incorporators. So yeah, what's interesting is there's I think I'm seeing a lot of AI maturity here. We do have some beginners, but ratio wise, we are looking at folks who have kind of been dabbling a little deeper in the AI pond with mods in it.
All right, so pond, note that word pond. All right. So for those of you who are familiar with AI already and have been spending some time, what we're hoping to do is give you some context for AI and, hey, why is this moving so fast? For those of you who are new, this is the perfect place to kind of get to know AI and what is all this generative AI that people are talking about anyway. And for the advocates, we're very interested to hear from you. Also, Q&A is also an opportunity for people who are here to share things with us. And, so please keep that in mind. So I will go ahead and move on. All righty. So for those of you for whom AI is new, this whole idea of the kind of square wheel is a kind of a paradox or a model that we've been using for teaching technology for a long time. So for a long time, I've been talking to people about new technology and why spend the time to learn about new technologies? And it's often, I've been working with nonprofit organizations for over 30 years. And often it's like, oh, but it could be, you could have so much more efficiency if you did it this way. It's like, I don't have time. I don't have time to learn this new stuff. I'm too busy. I just need to get my work done, right? And so it's kind of like, there's people over here with the round wheels, and the other guys are saying, no, 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 we're too busy, right? And I know a lot of people can feel that way about AI also. So why spend the time? Well, all right. So in the square wheel to round wheels, like, oh man, that made things so much easier. That's much better. Should have done this a long time ago, right? So this is a general lesson that I found with all technologies since the Stone Age of technology, when I started doing this and I was talking to people about like access databases, right? It's a long time ago. So all right, so that model, that's this what you're seeing now is something we've been using for a long time about why bother learning about technology. What we're finding about AI is this is even more of a kind of a shift because you can still get
Salut.
nope, you can still get the we're too busy,
Ouais, ça
right?
va, je suis en plein webinaire.
So you can still get the we're too busy to learn this new thing here. And though this is a new thing, if we let AI help us, we won't have our jobs anymore. Okay. I don't know how many people have felt that or heard that in their organizations, right? However, okay. And the more I listen to this stuff on podcasts, video, etc., a lot. Like, where is this? And yes, some jobs are going to change. But what we're seeing happen is that with AI, these kind of what we'll call the grunt work tasks, that can alleviate or take some of the time needed out of that so that then you could spend more time doing the things that are more human centered or require sensibilities, which is like in this case from schlepping rocks to instead building and designing the little house, right? So you have more time to do the things that make something quality, right? And I've personally found this to be true, but I've also seeing that it's an important skill to start to get because these AI tools are everywhere and not going anywhere. So if we can actually get to where our focus is more on this stuff, then we will be kind of better poised as AI continues to be, just one of the tool set. All right. So to answer the question, why is AI moving so quickly? I found it helpful to illustrate the idea of exponential growth. So with exponential growth, things double every day. So on day 0, we have a little house by a lake. Day 0, there are no lily pads whatsoever. Look out the window, nothing. Day 1, there's one lily pad. Day 2, there's 2. Day 4, there's 8. Day 4, there's day 3, there's 4, and day 4, there's 8. Okay, so they're doubling every day. I get to day 30. By the time I'm at day 30, this lake is so covered in lily pads, I cannot see the water anymore. Okay, and that's happened because they doubled every day. Right. So thinking about that kind of growth, doubling, here's a math question for you. Any math folks? So on what day then, if it's doubling, is the lake half full? And you can, okay, so we've got Teresa and Corrine, okay? Math people, all right? So you got, yes, the day, so if it's doubling every day, then on 29, it was half full, then day 30 is fully full, right? A little bit harder question. What about more than 1% full? What do you think? So I'd look out my window at the 1% day and someone would ask me, do I have a lily pad problem? And I'd say, no, not really. I really can't see any. It's hardly any lily pads. One can try to guess. This is a little bit more kind of, okay. And I think this will, again, think the exponential growth factor, doubling every day. All right. So I will go ahead and click day 24. All right. So that is to say that a mere 6 days before this lake surface is completely covered in lily pads, I would look out my window and say, nah, I don't have a lily pad problem. What makes you say that? We're fine. So this is exponential growth. So applying this level of growth to AI, where would you say we are? What do you think where do you think we are? And there's like, the other ones were like mathy questions that had like clear answers. In terms of AI development, and some people say like you really can't know, what day do you think we're at now in terms of AI development? I'd ask Destiny, but she knows the answer to this. Although she doesn't, because none of us really know the answer.
Kind of a vibe question, really,
It's a
right?
vibe. Yeah.
And I think it might also depend on how much you use it or how much you just see marketing and advertising telling you that AI is now in your deodorant and in your sneakers or what have you.
You can even get it in your cat box, apparently. Anyway, all right. So someone said it day 24, Crystal said it. Again, this is not like the other math problems with actually math answers. So the sense of is around 24, 25, like in that zone, right? And no, I don't think AI is in deodorant yet. Just- so, you know, so linear growth, right? So this is our linear growth path. That means that's kind of what human beings are used to. When we think about things growing, it's not like it's such a scale, right? But what's happened with AI is we had what kind of resembled linear growth for quite some time, right? Just remember the early days of the lily pad was like day 1, 2, 4, 8. But then all of a sudden it gets to this point where like boom, it goes right up. Like remember 1% full on day 24. So I would guess that we're right about there. What does that look like? Another way to look at this, exponential versus linear growth. There's little bits of linear growth in here, but really not much. So taking this zone as the benchmark of human performance, and I'm always very clear to say human performance without the emotions and kind of sensibilities that make us uniquely human, but just benchmarks in terms of testing benchmarks. So this is the 0 level. So back in the like 1989 or so, handwriting recognition was where it really started. And in the post office started this off with recognizing handwritten zip codes, right? They have to file lots and lots of or process lots and lots of mail going by at blazing speeds. How do you do this? So one of the first applications of this kind of using technology and this kind of intelligence, early artificial intelligence, was to be able to recognize what numbers were in a zip code, right? And handwriting recognition kind of got better, then it kind of right. So it kept on getting, it improved. Everything's improving over time. Speech recognition. I remember I worked actually for a brief time. I was working with language people who were learning English, and it seemed like I was doing this in like around 2011, right? And it seemed like the impossible dream that because we were doing online courses, it seemed impossible that someone could speak their answer to a quiz, to an essay question into the computer and it could kind of give them an answer, right? So this, however, that, as we've seen in a lot of these tools, has gotten incredibly better and fast. Things started happening 2007. Google was doing research around image recognition, right? So this was taking the type of handwriting recognition earlier to image recognition, which is more sophisticated. And all of a sudden at this point is where you start to see these trajectories that go straight up, okay? Now we're getting into 2016, 17, and then closer to where we are today. And the lines just go straight up. There's not much linear. It's completely not even exponential. It's just like getting huge leaps and bounds of improvement. And that's where we are with AI, really. Today, it's continuing this trajectory of kind of just going up. So how do we account for this? Well, there's lots of things. All of these advances that came before it have led to where we are, right? And the incredible processing power of computers themselves, the technology that can process all this data, and the amount of data. So with those things changing, that's all coming together to lead us to this place where things are just like changing literally overnight all the time. And you know, AI has passed certain human benchmarks at certain types of tasks. It's really not human performance. I wouldn't use the word performance, but it's a good question. All right, another way of looking at growth. This is a much shorter trajectory, though. March 2022, putting the word frog into, this is text to image, so this is creating images from words. Putting the word frog into an image generator, I got this guy on the left up here that doesn't really look much like a frog. We've got three eyes starting to resemble a frog a little bit. April, so a month later, and then a couple months later in July, that's taking the shape of a frog. Yeah, much more. November, man, something happened between July and November, and all of a sudden that's a frog, no question about it, right? And then it just keeps kind of improving, where, in March 2024, you could arguably say the generated frog looks more frog-like than the actual one. And then in February of this year, now I can make the frog jump. All right, so these are the kinds of, as we would say, leaps of improvement that we're seeing. And again, a lot of it's the availability of data and the processing power. And these capabilities kind of build on each other, right? So moving into that, so what is generative AI? So I like to think of it as generative AI is AI that makes things, right? So Microsoft Copilot is a tool to make things. Very fundamental set of components on this, right? Machine learning is very much at the heart of this, right? And there's the hub here, machine learning. All right, so with generative AI, the person drops a prompt in, that prompt goes into kind of this machine learning system, a system that has natural language processing, right? So it can understand language, right? So that goes in as an input that gets processed. It's pulling for its answer, it's pulling from this vast kind of amount of data over here. Now, this is proportionately, this would be like mega huge, right? But it's pulling from this data, processing it back, and then that comes out as the system output. Now, I can then say, as the user, I can say, thumbs up, that's great, or thumbs down, no, that wasn't quite right, please change it. Even this input, when I get the prompt and respond, that is more information that gets fed into the system, okay? So in these systems, and especially now, and I'm going to mention this point now, and it's going to come up again later because it's super important and part of responsible AI. In the free systems, so if you go onto the web and you start dropping prompts into some of the free AI systems, you will, free generative AI systems, your prompts may in fact become part of this training data. That's another term that's used for this data over here. It's training data. If you put like personal information or proprietary information in there, well, that kind of lets it loose in the world, right? One of the reasons why we are encouraging organizations, especially nonprofits, getting started with Copilot is because when you use something like Copilot, that does not happen. We are going to go into this much more, but just so long as we're at this illustration, I just wanted to kind of, this cycle is what keeps going on and on as people are dropping more prompts into these AI systems, asking for things, but also responding, right? Giving it reinforcement learning. And you can imagine with like billions of people using these things all the time, it keeps on getting more data. All right. So what's really happening inside the large language model, right? Large language model, by the way, that's a jargon thing. If this is new to you, that is another word for kind of these types of tools, these types of generative AI systems or large language models. So let's see if the pen, oh, the pen can be a little touchy here. Let me see. No more pen. Okay. So
Say if you ask ChatGPT, what's AI going to do in the future, right? The way that ChatGPT generates a response for you is actually really interesting. It's effectively just entirely statistical language modeling. Given a sentence or given some sort of prefix, GPT's entire goal, its entire objective, is simply to take those words and predict of all the tokens in its known vocabulary, the probability of any one of those tokens being the actual genuine next token in the sequence. That's all that GPT is doing. What you're seeing right now is a genuine visualization of the way that GPT, specifically GPT-2, would generate a response. It is simply taking words and predicting the probabilities of which word will come next.
right, and that was perhaps one of the best kind of explanations that I had on what is going on in there. And I remember it seems like at the ice age of AI back in 2023, when I heard Tanmay Bakshi, and was like 19 at the time, no kidding. But he was so glad to make this video for myself and my colleague because he knew we were going to be talking to nonprofit organizations. We were just about to launch one of the first AI courses with TechSoup, and he knew we were going to be talking to nonprofits because it is important that human-centered people, right? You're asking some good questions in here in the chat. Human-centered people are using these tools because we need to be asking questions.
Say if
Oops. All right. So probabilistic statistical outcomes and Copilot. So what is it doing is that, use the term artificial intelligence, AI. So it's really statistics, right? That's what Tanmay Bakshi was saying, is probabilistic statistics. But that kind of doesn't have the same zing to it that, generative AI and Copilot does. And probably none of you would have signed up for this class today. So the LLM systems that are out there, okay, this is just kind of a very high level overview of them. So there's a bunch of free tools, and these are all come in paid versions too. But basically on the free tool side of things, we got ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, that's the Google product, and Microsoft Copilot Web Chat. That's free, and we'll show you how even if you're not like you take this class today and you're like, well, I don't know if I want to use this stuff, and I don't know if I want to pay for it. If you have Microsoft, actually, you don't have to, but we'll save that thought. But you could just go and try it out, right? Note though that, and what was just said by some very wise people also in the chat, that it's if it's the free version, that you don't have the same privacy controls you do over a subscription. All right. So then we go into free with subscription. Destiny did say when it's, when something's free, somebody's paying, right? And it's, in this case, it's your data. So subscriptions are good. We like subscriptions. for that reason. So Microsoft Copilot Chat, and that's what we're going to be focused on today. And then in next week's class, we're going to be showing you some stuff that you can do and create with Copilot Chat. So that's Microsoft's, right? So if you have a Microsoft 365 for your organization, that's free with your subscription. Even if you have like a personal account, that's also free. Then there's kind of, we'll call it the upgraded versions of uh, the paid. Copilot Pro is the version of Copilot that integrates with the Microsoft tools like Excel, PowerPoint, Word, Outlook, etc. Right? So Copilot Chat, this guy, is kind of its own chat tool. And then Copilot Pro is a chat tool and it integrates with your other applications, right? Other paid tools are ChatGPT, Google, Gemini, and Claude also all have paid team versions, right? But as I said, we're going to be focused on this one here today. And actually, we're going to focus more on this. Sorry about that. Wrong marking. All right, so generative AI, for those who are new to it, it's ideal. It's like I don't ever have to worry about blank page syndrome again, and that is something that I do kind of worry about when I'm writing. I don't know about you, Destiny, or kind of like, where do I begin? Even if it's not where I want to go in the end, it's great for starting stuff off. You can ask it a question. You can ask the Copilot, how can you help me? I need help brainstorming something, or help me think through different aspects of the situation that I'm planning for, right? You can experiment to your heart's content in terms of how you ask questions. Think of it as kind of bringing on a new team member, right? Not to personify it too much, but bringing on a new team member, and you're kind of getting to know how does this person understand what I'm asking for, etc. So you can ask it things, right? The more specific you are, the closer you might get if what you want is something pretty specific and you know what you want. But I really encourage people to experiment. I can't say that enough, right? That's the best way to learn how to use generative AI, is to experiment. Oh, and now Destiny will talk about responsibility.
So if you think back a few slides ago when Kim showed we don't have time for it slide with the square wheels, and we learned that having round wheels can help improve things for you. One of the concerns that comes up for a lot of folks is what is going to happen to people when we start using AI for everything? And is our information safe if we use AI? Are we worried about what's going to happen when we use AI? And that's where we want to talk about the people side and the responsible use of it. So on the next slide, people always need to be involved. People always need to be involved in technology, but we really want to keep people involved when it comes to AI, because while we've seen this exponential growth, you can also, if you kind of harken back to the slide, it's only been in the last 5 or so years, right? It's still what we would consider new. And it's something that's moving very fast and something that's being integrated very fast. But it's also something where we have the ability to have a lot of influence in it, where we can voice ideas about legislation for it. We can voice how we want vendors to use our information. We can voice, with the money that we spend on AI and things like that, where and who we're going to invest in. And I think that nonprofits are really like the best place in a way to start with this, because there's an understanding of ethics. There's an understanding of community. There's an understanding of grassroots movements. There's an understanding of getting things done. And there's also the understanding and the desire for the people within these types of organizations to help influence things for the good. And so this is why, even if you're not necessarily prepared to fully roll out AI in your organization, I think it's important for everyone to at least start thinking about it and thinking about how you want to influence the way AI is going to be integrated into things, whether you want it or not. And that's where we talk a little bit about what we call the sphere of the next slide, our our sphere of influence, right? So there are concerns that we all have about AI and how it's using our data and things like that, right? And so what can we do with that concern? Well, the first thing we have is we do have that area of influence, right? And so what does this look like? This is where we can advocate. This is where we can talk to people about having legislation. This is where we can influence organizations and companies that we work with and how we want them to integrate and put AI into their products. You know, we don't need AI-based deodorant, but maybe we're using tools like Microsoft that have given us AI. So how do we influence them to use this responsibility? A while back when I think Zoom introduced some AI things without letting people know, and they got a lot of feedback from the community, and they rolled that back because it was essentially, you fix this or we are not using your product. So there's a lot that we can say with our voices, particularly when our voices are supported by our dollars. And so there's a lot of areas that we can influence this, and that's along with research too. And it's along with like how we put data out there into the world and how we influence the use of unbiased data. And we'll talk a little bit more about the bias in data. But we also have control. And where we have control is for us learning about the tools, for us understanding how we use the tools and how our information is going to be used, about us looking at privacy policy, AI use policy, at terms and conditions of products that have AI built into them, so we understand how that information is going to be used. And it's also one of the reasons why I think a lot of you are here is about the organizational strategy for this. What kind of policies and information do we need to have in our organization surrounding AI and the use of our data? What kind of guidelines, what kind of education, what kind of decisions do we need to make around the use of AI? And so that's hand in hand with education, but this is where you do have the control piece. So you can correlate some of the concerns with influence and some of these also with the actual control of what you can and can't do or what you should or shouldn't do. So on the next slide, you know, we also want to be aware of the information that is generated by AI. And I think thinking about the fact that it is a predictive language model and it is not a calculator, it doesn't work in the same way that other types of technology might. There's information that can be false. There's information it can potentially make up. Depending on the tool that you're using and depending on what the information you're feeding into it, it is again important for people to be involved because the output is not 100% guaranteed to be accurate. And so for that, a little bit of that fear and concern over, well, how do we know something's been written by AI, or do we have concerns? That's where the responsible people come into play. We need to stay involved. We need to look at what AI is generating. We need to cross-check that information and look at that data and everything else. So there needs to be a bit of distrust in the accuracy, which brings us to how we mitigate some of that risk, and that is human intervention. That is not an expert on a topic and you are getting information back from AI, you might want to use it in a way that you can get the sources from, deep research, where it will give you the links to the websites or the articles that it found to do that research for you. You want to reiterate, review. If you are not the expert, then you need to give it to someone who is an expert to look at that for you, right? So some of this might require a paid version to do some of that more in-depth research, but that's where you also have to know your limitations and the limitations of the tool, where you say, well, I need to do something where I can get references because this is a more deep research I might need to purchase a license for it. I'm using this to help me write a letter, write an email, kind of think through some blank page syndrome stuff where, you know, it's not necessarily sensitive and it's more of a creative type of thing. Free tools are going to work great for you. So it's a little bit of, you know, using the right tool for the right situation as well, and knowing what your limitations are and having a resource to double check that when necessary. And when we think about some of the things that we might need to double check on the next slide is a little bit of what we call biased data. So I'm going to let John Oliver talk a little bit about data bias.
Right.
Researchers like Joy Blomweeny have repeatedly found that certain groups tend to get excluded from the data that AI is trained on, putting them at a serious disadvantage.
With self-driving cars, when they tested pedestrian tracking, it was less accurate on darker-skinned individuals than lighter-skinned individuals.
Joy believes this bias is because of the lack of diversity in the data used in teaching AI to make distinctions.
As I started looking at the data sets, I learned that for some of the largest data sets that have been very consequential for the field, they were majority men and majority lighter-skinned individuals or white individuals. So I call this pale male data.
Okay, pale male data is an objectively hilarious term, and it also sounds like what an AI program would say if you asked it to describe this show. But biased inputs leading to biased outputs is a big issue across the board here. Researchers like
this is where, you know, where we have that influence and where keeping humans in the loop comes from. So when Joy did this research, it basically, she looked into it and said, wait a minute, something here isn't right. Something here is biased. And there was a huge amount of influence that went back and looked at the way data was being trained. And so this is a part of where we also need to keep that piece of it as well, knowing that results can come back with that bias. And we need to review not just for accuracy, but we also want to review for that biased data, saying, you know, what is the perspective of the feedback? And some of this can also come into play when we talk, I think in the next session or later on or in the next session, a little bit more about prompt writing, where asking questions in the right way is also going to help produce results in the way that you want them. And when we can recognize that there might be bias in the information, we can ask for feedback that takes that into account as well. And so, yeah, and so if you want to kind of learn more about some of the bias data and some of the work that was done here, there's, you know, some great podcasts and transcripts. And again, this is where we influence as we discover things that need to be changed. You know, she went back and she went to the organizations and said, this is what the research is showing me. You need to fix the data problem. And that started getting addressed. So, you know, when we think about that built-in bias side of things, I think that's really the takeaway here is that if we're working off of our own data sets that we are supplying, that's a little bit different, as long as we're sure that our data isn't biased. But when you are looking at general research, general feedback, things like that, where it is not focused specifically on data you are giving it, you really want to be aware of that, which is, again, just reiterating the point of human review and understanding human review and understanding. Okay. And so when we think a little bit about the privacy of data, so concern one is the ethics of data a little bit. Now we have a bit more on the privacy side of things. And this is where Kim spoke a little bit about free tools, paid tools. When something is free, you are the product, right? So if you are using the absolutely free version of something that isn't tied to any kind of subscription, I would say work under the general assumption that your information is going to be used to train. Now, if you're just saying, help me write a cute birthday poem for somebody, that may not matter. If you're saying, oh, here's all of our donors and help me determine how much money they've given, where they live based off of zip code, what have you, that's going to be a problem, right? And so we really want to think about when we are putting information into these tools, are we putting it into a tool that has that privacy component as a part of it? And in the cases of organizations that have a Microsoft 365 subscription, and when we say paid, that might even be the donation. So while you might not be fully paying for it, it is still considered the business version. That has the protection of privacy on that side. If you are going to Copilot on just the web without having logged in with anything, then that is not covered by that same amount of privacy and protections. So this is why it's also important when you are doing certain things that you do it when logged into your organizational Microsoft account, because that's going to make sure that the information that is put into Copilot is now secured behind that privacy and terms and conditions of your 365 licensing. Okay. And so the basic subscription model is going to have Copilot chat, but for some of you who want to go more in depth and are going to want to do deeper dives or more complex things, that's where you can add on to the subscription, and that gets you some features. So in session 2, we're going to show you the difference between the things that you're able to do in a Copilot chat versus some of the paid versions and the integrations they have with even your Microsoft Office suite like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and the use of agents and a few other fun things. But that's kind of the teaser for next week's session. But know that when we think about safety and privacy and the concerns that you have, that's where licensing makes the difference. And so the other nice thing about AI is it will not get tired of you asking the same question again and again and again and again and again until you start liking the results that you get. So while you are deciding what the AI is going to work on, and while you need to give it clear instruction, and the better you are in doing your prompts and giving it that clear instruction to get quicker results for what you want and that you want to review it, the nice thing is that you can just keep asking it until you get it right. But we'll talk more in the next session about how you thinking through the problem a little bit helps get better results quicker and the type of results that you want a little bit quicker. But it's your assistant. It is there to do as you ask it. It is not there to do things instead of you in some way. So even for those mundane, repetitive tasks, it still comes down to you to have set them up, make sure that what you're asking to do is accurate, and reviewing it periodically to make sure what's being generated, particularly as you advance more into automation, that you are doing periodic checks to make sure that something isn't different, something hasn't changed, and that you're always reviewing output on a regular cycle. Okay. And so I think we're going to ask anyone, and this is kind of the leading question of, are you or is anyone using AI for work-related tasks? And if you don't think anybody is, they probably are. And I'm not sure if this is a poll or not.
This is a 2-part poll.
Okay.
It's a 2-question poll. Yes.
So are you and anyone at work using AI for work-related tasks? Is that a yes or no or a We're not sure. And we're getting a lot of yeses.
And some not sures.
Yeah, oh well. Because I think that's a little telling on what's going to be the follow-up question. So I think we can pull up the follow-up question.
So the follow-up was actually put into the question field, but didn't populate into the poll.
Oh, okay. And so the follow-up question for that one is, has your organization provided you with any training or guidance, such as an AI policy? So, if you've gotten training or an AI policy, feel free to drop that into the chat. And, maybe you're not sure. Maybe this is your training, right? Or maybe this is the start of your educational journey.
There's one yes in there. Oop.
Okay. And then someone who's been tasked with writing the policy. The good news is AI can help you write the policy. No.
Actually, we will cover that.
Yes, because we will be providing a policy template for you, I think, maybe on the next slide or coming up on the next slide.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, no, not quite yet. Soon.
Almost to the next slide, but the answer to the unasked question is yes, because we are already recognizing, I think 80-something% that folks are using AI already, and that maybe some of us haven't necessarily been given guidance or training around it. Now is the time to really make sure that you start implementing or thinking through an AI strategy and policy. So not just the policy, but a bit of the strategy on how do we want to use AI, because it is helpful. It can do a lot of things. It can take that pulling a box full of rocks that's on square wheels, take all of that out of the way to allow you to focus on the things that matter. It can help move some tasks along faster. It can help you think more creatively. It can help look through data for you. But you won't be able to do that unless you strategize around that. So really now is the time that you start thinking about that through for an organization and building into that the responsible and ethical use of AI and what that looks like for your organization. And so now we have the now we have ways that this can help you mitigate risk of data going into places that data shouldn't go, or things getting released or put out there that might not have had the right kind of human review cycle. And so here we have the TechSoup and Microsoft AI use policy template, which will hopefully be plopped into the chat for you to grab that link. And so this will help for folks who are using 365 to start you on your usage and policy journey, to help provide some of those guidelines and help you align the use with your organization. And thank you, Kim, for dropping that in so everyone can grab that link from the chat, and that can help you start your AI policy development. And I would say that, sometimes when the question comes up of, well, what do we want to put into our policy because we're not sure yet, I would say starting with some of the guide rails around not putting sensitive information into free tools, making sure you're logged into your organizational account so you can use the tool that offers you some privacy and protection, and realizing that AI is built into a lot of things. And so without looking at the AI usage, you may want to consider not using it until that has been reviewed by somebody within the organization to go through and say, at this time, we're approving this, we feel comfortable with it, or hold off on using this until we've been able to vet it more thoroughly. And with that, I believe I hand it back over to Kim. She always likes to give me the scary stuff.
So getting started with Copilot. Alrighty. So if you're just getting started, and I think I can, well, I don't know if I'm gonna, I'll share my screen. You can go simply, right? I have this open, but I don't want to kind of disrupt everything. I can show you guys later during Q&A if people still have questions. If you have if you don't have a Microsoft account, have never, been on Copilot, etc., you can just go into your browser and type copilot.microsoft.com. And in fact, so if you're brand new to this, you're still checking it out, not sure if you want to do it, but you plan to come back next week, in between today and next week, give this a try, copilot.microsoft.com. Okay? But caveat, no personal or sensitive information, right? Because this is the free version. You don't get privacy controls with the free versions. They just don't have those settings, because I don't have an account right in here to even have settings. So you see, I haven't signed in, right? But I can still ask it a question. I could ask it about potato salad, like I was earlier, beginning of the session. All right. If you have a Microsoft account, so if you have a personal account, you are just on your own and you have, a paid subscription, you can then go to, guess what? Copilot.microsoft.com, right? It's consistent. When you're logged in to your personal Microsoft account, see this picture, this is me in my personal, I happen to have a personal, Microsoft account as well as my work one. But when I'm logged in, I go to copilot.microsoft.com, then I am in my personal, right? I can switch privacy to on, but I need to know to do that, right? So I need to just know to check that setting. It's in my settings, so it's not hard to do, but it's just something you need to do. However, if you are in your work account, okay, and so this is me at work. Actually, this is my colleague Josh, but this is us at work. I'm logged into my work account. I go to copilot.microsoft.com. Notice this looks a little different, has more stuff going on, and you'll notice it has a little green shield. That means my data or the stuff that I put into Microsoft Copilot, either my prompts or if I want to upload a document. Someone earlier in the comments was talking about how, wow, Copilot was amazing at analyzing a document. Yes, it's great at that. And whatever you put in, it has the same kinds of protections as other data, documents, etc. in your Microsoft environment if you're logged into the one at work. So it kind of retains that type of security, right? So again, the address is the same, microsoft.copilot.com, but you get added protections, and by default, it's in your work enterprise account. See, there's a close-up on this little guy. And you see that sometimes it changes slightly because it's all filled in green right now, I think, but you'll see a little shield. All right. So access does need to be enabled at your organization, but I think that's pretty easy to do. So this is, Microsoft Copilot. Then I don't know if you remember at the very beginning when I was showing the different subscription levels, there also is a paid version of Microsoft Copilot that is the one that is more integrated into your suite of Office applications like Excel, Word, PowerPoint, etc. It has access to all the data that you have access to. Okay, that's an important point to make. And we will be talking more about that for sure next week. But this is, a big thing to think about when you think about kind of using it in your applications. Though this one does require the extra license, so you would know if you had it. So your organization wouldn't just happen by mistake. So your organization would have made the decision to do that. But then it gives Copilot capabilities in these different tools, right? So there's this is a kind of a lot going on here. So which Copilot is the right one? As you can see, going down here, oops, I'm not sorry. This is stuff that is part of your work environment. This is more personal, right? So personal accounts. So I don't know, there might be some people who are taking this session that are not at an organization, but you're working personally. Maybe you're in grad school or something, you have a personal account. So these are the different tools that you have. You can also have Copilot Pro in that. And again, so there's a lot here. These slides will be made available, but these are basically the different kinds of levels, right? Of Copilot. All right, this is a different way of looking at it. And what do these different plans come with, right? So Microsoft Copilot Chat versus Microsoft 365 Copilot. This is actually the more regular price. It is discounted for nonprofits. I think it's $26. Kevin will correct me if I'm wrong on that. Okay, so this again looks at business and individuals. Similar things, but this version shows you the types of capabilities that you have. And Copilot Chat is web grounded, which means that it has access to the web. And it's powered by GPT-4o. Copilot, so these are the different things that you can use. And we'll be showing you these different things next week in terms of how to use them. But so there is a lot here, and there is kind of a lot to unpack. But for the purposes of what we've been talking about today, everything would be available here. Some added features here. but most of what we're covering today and next week are in this. Okay, so here's some nonprofit use cases. All right, so these are just some examples of how you can use it, right? You can use these tools to jazz up an email. So say I give it like a meh kind of email, like a lacking in personality email, and I say, please fine tune this email so that it's more engaging for, young women who would be looking at this, girls in science event who would be interested in this, who live in the suburb of New York City, etc. So you can kind of jazz things up, and you can jazz things up very specifically. We will be talking next week about prompt writing and how you can ask for some of these, how you can shape some of what the AI provides for you a little bit more closely. Again, you always want to proofread it. One of my favorite uses of these types of tools, generative AI, is read a long report for me and generate a summary document highlighting key points, right? That is super helpful, right? I can't possibly read all the stuff that I want to read, but I can get an outline, and I can also ask the AI, where is this? Like, if I want to validate that this quote really did come from it, then I can ask, please give me a quote from it. Please help me, what page is it on? Right? So I can ask these sorts of questions so that then I can dig into the specific things I'm interested in this report. And you can also end up having kind of a dialogue with the document, which is kind of cool, right? You can ask questions, does it cover X, Y, and Z, right? So that's another typical use case. These are kind of low risk things to try, again, in your work accounts and with reports that, you have acts that are okay to, to be using. You can also ask it to help you with agendas, discussion questions. It's great for planning like workshops and things like that. You can use a source document, like in this, I use a lot of this stuff with the UN's global goals. You could take like an example of one of their activities and say, okay, say I'm going to give a workshop on this. Read this toolkit and provide me with an agenda and discussion questions for this content. Right? Again, it gives me ideas. It helps me brainstorm this. But I will always validate. It can analyze a website, and then it can also this is really helpful for emails and marketing, right? I'm not a marketing person, actually, but if I want to try to promote something like this report on women leading the, global goals, right? I can say, like, what types of audience personas, like who should I be targeting my messaging for? And I can give it this type of document, and I can even say, what I would like to, who I would like to attract, and it could create then a series of personas, however many I ask for, right? In this case, I think in this example, I asked for 5. Like, so it creates these personas for me, and then I can go ahead and then create content, like in this case, it's LinkedIn and email content for each of the different personas that it created for me before, right? So that's how I can kind of build on what the AI can create, and I can hold on to these personas and then say, all right, give me some LinkedIn posts for this, read this report, we're going to do a special session on this. So it can really help me design and create content. Again, of course, it's the first draft. So Destiny showed us to keep the human in the loop, right? So I'm going to stay in the loop and make sure that what it's given me is correct, and reflects all the facts. But honestly, it is often better than I can write in terms of this type of writing. It's not my strong suit, right? So this is where we get into next week. Okay, so next week's session, we can we're going to make stuff for you. So a chunk of the session is going to be a live demo. Now let me find the link. We invite you to ask us to create things for you. And in fact, if you have kind of a report, an RFP, a standard operating procedure, etc., we'd be happy to, let me grab the form here. We'd be happy to then try to create that for you in the intervening week. Here's the, I'm going to drop this form in, and we can then live demo the things that you want to have created, or an experiment that you would like to do. Or say you're wondering, how would Copilot help me, create, a certain kind of illustration? Or, oi, I have to write this RFP. I really don't feel like it. These people teaching this class said they'd do it for me. I'm going to have them do it. Right? Or job description, or, you can give us mundane stuff or exciting. We can also translate. Right? So that's another use case. A request for proposal, sorry. Sometimes when you're, say if you're going to have some IT work done, okay. So in this form, tell us what you would like. If you have source material, like if you're saying, I'd like you to go to this website, types of requests we've gotten is, please go to our website and create an overview slide presentation on the types of things that we do, and then do it in Spanish too. Okay? So that's a request. Be more than happy to do that, but you have to tell me what your website is. So unless we have that, because I don't actually have any of your personal data. So give us work. You need social media campaign, you know? Right, so we can do illustrations, we can do graphics, we can do photos. And if you have a challenging communication, man, I had a challenging communication I needed AI to help me with this morning. Was writing something to someone who was a little upset. But anyway, so it can be very, very helpful. Yes, and we do frogs. And I hear that one of the people who's giving this webinar, who's not me, also does great potatoes and ducks. Just saying. All right. So this is the live demo. Give us your work, right? How often do people say that?
Yeah, like let us make your life easier. I mean, that's kind of the point of AI. It's really about making your life easier so it'll freeze you up to work on more important things. Yes, there's still going to be a little bit of the mundane of the I need to review what the thing told me to make sure it's legitimate. But, when you think about reading a 20-page PDF and kind of figuring out some of the highlights or letting it do it for you and then just kind of perusing the highlights certainly saves me a lot of time.
Yeah, people have given us like really gross regulations. Like we have to, we're setting up a daycare and this is the state regulation document on this. And it's like 85 pages of like, ugh, right? And then so it's like, help us come up with a plan. It's a first draft, right? It's a great first draft. But so anyway,
And I think
sky's the limit.
it's also good for the frustrated creatives where I do a lot of presentations and I cannot do art. I can think of the idea, but I cannot actually make it happen from my fingertips. And so, for all of the frustrated creative folks out there who want to have images created for them or scenes or more poetic language, it really helps with that as well. So, it allows you to do some things that you may not be able to do yourself. So I actually have found it to not reduce my creativity, but help improve my creativity in some places.
And Josh, you're asking some good questions. We can talk about it in the Q&A more in a couple minutes, but about the AI policy and how it can help shape that. And like Destiny, for all your artistry, like I think I was supposed to do something about these hands. Because they really bothered someone in a
Yeah, I think that
previous
just creeps
session.
people out. But the thing I have learned, actual real frogs, is real frogs are a lot weirder than AI generated frogs,
Yes.
where if you saw a real frog, you would think it was fake. Not all frogs, but some frogs.
Okay. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Michael. Yeah, yeah, we have to redo that one. We will. All right. So, I think that is today's session. What time are we at? 4:35. So we have about 25 minutes. Oops. Let me see. Boop. What am I doing? Stop sharing. I do have one. Oops. Stop sharing. There we go.
All
There we
right.
go. I've officially stopped sharing. So now we can take some Q&A questions. Some of your questions. Happy to answer them.
There are many. I'm trying to scroll back to where the
I
questions
know.
start. Yes, frogs should stay away from hot oil. Scrolling, I mean, I think there's a little bit of confusion about the licensing side of things as usual. And whether or not you have business premium or E3, that is more about the other aspects of the Microsoft 365 licensing. The Copilot chat is what you're going to get with your Microsoft 365 subscription, unless you are then adding on a Copilot specific subscription. So having business premium is not inherently giving you additional Copilot functionality. That is still your basic Copilot chat. And when you get the slide information, there's the table and the chart, which is probably going to be a little bit better about giving some details on that. So it's less about the specific regular type of 365 subscription. It's the fact that you are using the 365 subscription period that gets you Copilot chat. And then anything above that is a separate actual Copilot license.
Okay, so Josh asked a question earlier. I think it was when you were talking, Destiny, about kind of hallucinations or confabulations, which is a word. Who used that word before AI came about, right? No one. Um, Josh says hallucinations terrify me in the context of mission work when users aren't customers changing hotel reservations, but people seeking help, services, health info. Exactly right. And that's okay. So it's one thing to have your staff have access to a tool that can look things up, and you've provided your staff with the information that these things can make things up. So it might give you a list of resources, but then you want to double check some of these, right? You also want to verify some things. So sometimes I'll have an AI tool write me a set of guidelines or recommendations for someone, but I know what they are. I know what they should be. It just writes it up much better than I could a zillion times more quickly. Okay, but I can validate that that information is correct. So, sometimes when I get afraid is when I hear some nonprofits, and this is happening a little bit more, is some folks will say, "Oh, we want to have a chatbot on our website that gives like advice." Well, no, yes, they will hallucinate. That's part of generative AI. It means it's creative, right? That's why it, like for those lawyers, it made up law cases. So tools like, Copilot can give you sources. That really helps. And it's kind of like someone doing the research for you, compiling it, and then you double check. So I think that's a great point that you raise. But that's why you keep the human in the loop. Sometimes it's more human than AI in the loop for some of these things. But it just helps take care of some of the busy work, like looking stuff up and finding things and kind of summarizing documents and things like that.
Yeah. And I think that's also why, and I think this is segueing to a bit of the follow-up question about how you are structuring use of AI within the organization, where you might say, yes, you can use it as a research assistant when it's going to give you the actual sources. But we have determined that we are not comfortable in using this as a chat bot at this time until we've seen improvements in the way AI works. And that's why thinking through the strategy of how you want to use AI within your organization, where it is acceptable to have AI be a piece of it, and where you want it to be 100% human centric. Because I think that also leads back to a question on the what do you want to do about transparency? How much do you want to communicate to folks that something is or was created based off of AI? And that's an interesting question. And it's a little harder to answer because you can comparatively say, well, how much of it, how much do we disclose to people that I hired a subcontractor to start doing this work for me, or I asked my intern to do it, or I did a whole bunch of, Google searches and cut and pasted it together and then, put it together as something else. And so, at the core of it, if you think of it as a tool that you would, have looked at a book or you would have used any other research materials, do you necessarily disclose that? And that's the level of comfort within the organization to say, we feel comfortable that if there is enough human intervention, or if we just used it as a kicking off place to something, but we reviewed it, we're not solely relying on just putting in a prompt and taking whatever it spit back out as what we've communicated to people, then do you have to disclose? That's a little bit up to where, again, your policy and the strategy and the ethics of the organization come into play. Would I want something to be said 100% generated by AI without disclosure? Yeah, I would probably want 100%. But if somebody used it as a kicking off point and then iterated and thought about it, and there was that human piece involved in it, I don't know if I, personally speaking, needed to know that started out with AI. Feel differently in how you work within your organization and with the folks who work with your organization.
Yeah, like I create articles on LinkedIn and I use AI to generate those images. And I gave AI full credit because goodness knows I couldn't do it. But, but yeah, think of it, so that I feel, and that I feel that that's appropriate. Um, a couple people have asked, and I will touch upon the question, environmental impact, right? So, yes, that is one of the issues around AI, and it's one of the issues that human-centered nonprofit people are very aware of and should be, right? I want to say that the use of AI in like queries, like when you submit prompts, the use of AI that's not so much what they're talking about, though it's true. Having so many people use these tools, right, does have it does take, has there's some environmental impact. It's the training though, the earlier training of the models that I think that's the greater environmental impact. The tools are, I know the different companies responding to pressure from the public and pressure from people who are concerned about these things are looking into ways and constantly researching ways and using AI to research ways that it can have less of an environmental toll, right? And it kind of is like different things that we do. And I think about, using it mindfully, right? Different things that we do, like driving cars and stuff like that, are going to have also environmental impact. So it's a personal choice. Um, so I just want to answer that question. There are no easy answers, and I think continuing to advocate for more responsible AI means more responsible kind of stewardship of the environment. I think that is an important thing, and I think that's something that to continue to voice, right? Area of influence.
Yeah, exactly that. When we talk about the human influence in AI, very much to Kim's point, it's not necessarily just about the AI and our data itself. It's also about the other kind of collateral part of what it does, the heavy computing, things like that. And the more influence we say about we want to advocate for more green energy use in AI and data centers, these are the areas where we can also push and influence companies to be better about that as well.
Yeah, and in fact, Joy Buolamwini, okay, who really is like an amazing human being, right? She started her research early on when she kind of discovered that the AI did not recognize her face, right? But she took that research and she actually went to Microsoft and Amazon and these like major companies, and she was like a grad student, MIT, and they changed their training data. They updated it when they were approached, right, with this evidence. So I think, the more we kind of let concerns be out there, the more influence we can have. And there are also organizations like Algorithmic Justice League, which is the one that Joy Buolamwini started, that are dedicated to things like this, to having influence together, to bringing people together for that. Um, so, um, so there is a question here about how much do I need to train Copilot? So starting to explore Copilot. Next week, we're going to show you kind of prompt writing. So at this point, you're less training. This is answering Jackie's question. Thank you for the question. At this point, you're less kind of training the AI, right? As much as you're shaping a question that is optimized for getting the type of response you want from the AI. And we'll show you how you can use even some of the tools built into Copilot, like it has a prompt improver in it. So like, I want to ask the AI to do XYZ. How do I ask it better? So these are some of the tools. So that's more what the training looks like. And we can show you some of those things next week for sure, live.
I think, different tools do things differently. The same reason when, you do a search via one search engine versus a different search engine, results can be a little different. Or when you're even using voice recognition, that maybe when you are using voice recognition on your iPad, it might be different than if you're doing it via Slack or an Android. So tools do work a little bit differently. And sometimes it's getting used to how you use that tool and what kind of prompts, what kind of language works better for that particular tool. It's the same thing even with day-to-day tools. Maybe you have like two different frying pans. If I use my little 8-inch nonstick, if I'm making eggs, it's great. But if I'm using my cast iron, I have to make sure I put a little oil in it or the eggs are going to stick, right? So the tools can both make you an excellent egg. You just need to work with them a little bit differently.
But Destiny to note will not put that egg in her potato salad.
That is true.
Just to say. And Damon, yeah, that's a great suggestion that Damon added in the chat about you can ask the AI when you're prompting it, what do you need do you have what you need to answer my question, or do you have questions? And then sometimes it'll ask me questions. So yeah, think of it as the intern that you could ask it a very generalized question and it might give you a very generalized response. But so the more specific.
Yeah. And the other thing we'll talk about in the prompt writing side is also giving it a voice. Do you want to respond as a, very polished business professional? Do you want it to respond as a more casual teenager? So you can also tell it how to think about the answer. So not just the question and what you're trying to seek, but in the tone and the voice, both in which you ask and with which you want it to respond. So it really is an unshaped piece of clay. Or when you think about art, you could say, I want a sunset. Well, do I want an impressionist sunset? Do I want a realist sunset? Do I want a surrealist sunset? And when you think about what you want it to give you on the other side of it, that's what you to also tell it. So there's prompt writing is really interesting, and which is why I definitely say we'll have fun in the next session. And again, it can help you. What can I tell you to make this a better result? This is what I don't like about the results I'm getting. What do you need to be more in line with this kind of results? So definitely come there. And I think also source data. This comes up a lot. There's I'm looking for an answer based off of the general information in the world that it's been trained on versus I am giving you a specific document and want you to focus on and review solely with what is in that document. And that's going to be different kinds of results because one is giving you a targeted focused piece of information. The other one is the world is my oyster.
Yeah, and someone did ask like ChatGPT and Copilot. Okay, so yeah, there's lots of tools out there and also Midjourney Stable Diffusion. One of the reasons that we're talking about Copilot, such like this Microsoft session, is that this is something that comes in your work environment that's free, and that if you're logged in to your account, you have certain safety. So that's why a lot of places at work, I recommend for clients that are Microsoft users, start off, roll it out.
Exactly. Start your journey here because you have something that you don't have to pay for that has your protections along with the rest of your Microsoft account. So instead of having to go out there necessarily and embed other tools and pay for other tools, start with what start with what you already have in the cupboard before you go to the grocery store.
And also it's
Apparently I need a
optimized
snack.
for she's hungry, I think. So it's optimized more for, the Microsoft environment, right? So it's kind of built around that set of needs, right? The work environment and work productivity set of needs.
Yeah. So it's a good place to start the AI journey for folks who have not, and also because it's built in, it's something that doesn't require a whole lot of vetting or hand holding on the outside of it because that piece is already covered by your existing licensing. So,
alrighty.
All right. So I think we've
any other questions?
I think we've tired out our questions.
Kevin, do you have any questions? You've been answering a lot. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't. I will say I certainly have enjoyed this, and I've enjoyed the amount of commentary. This seems to actually be, maybe I'll be a little biased here to this group, the most engaged. So that's always good to see. So
yeah, no, great
congratulations.
questions today. Yeah, thank you so much for these questions. And remember, actually, I'm going to give the form again, okay? Because I want some homework. I want to do some of your.
I want to do your work for you.
Like, who says that, right?
Exactly, right. But the thing I really appreciate too about like some of the comments is and the thoughtful questions is that it is new, right? We are developing all of this together as a society, while it's actively being used. And we don't have the answers for everything. And as things change, answers like technology change quickly too. And what is right for some people in their environment, in their organization, may not be comfortable for others. So some of this is a little opinion based, where some people might be more comfortable in using things in their day to day. It's also totally understandable and respectable to say, we're not quite there yet. We need to think about it a little more. But this is really about awareness and education. So you can walk into these discussions and these decisions with your organization with like more in the background, more information, more knowledge at your fingertips, or hopefully at least a place to start the conversation from, instead of not knowing that a conversation needs to be had in the first place. And AI is not perfect. Obviously, there's a lot of areas where it can improve, but hopefully, as long as we're with that journey and along for that ride, we can influence that improvement as well.
So a lot of good questions about, some of these are Kevin questions, but reference using Outlook and Teams content in Copilot 365 chat. I think you need to have the
extended license.
For that.
It's specifically called an add-on license or subscription. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Copilot is Ibiana, is it similar to the AI in ClickUp? No, it's different. I don't know what's in the AI in ClickUp, and I don't know what their privacy policy is, having not read it yet. But it's there are some similarities, maybe, but it's less application specific unless you're using it in like Excel. It's more like that general screen where you can ask questions is more like a traditional type of AI chatbot.
Yeah, and also sometimes things that, not everything is AI. Certain things work on entirely different kind of models like search, web searches and stuff like that. While it might have in the back end some AI component to it, it's not the same. It's not a large language learning model in the same vein. So not everything you interact with is necessarily AI, and some stuff may very well be, just to make it more confusing, right? But next week
Yeah.
we'll bring in, when we talk to life, we'll bring back the hamburger and fry analogy on the you know, when you have your 365 license, that comes with your, you know, chatbot cheeseburger. But if you want fries and you want to add bacon or a hard-boiled egg, then that's going to be the add-on that you are going to pay different. You're going to pay extra for. But you're
Wow.
still eating it in that same secure restaurant.
See, Destiny really is hungry, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we need to get her some food. And if anyone should want help creating an AI policy along the lines of what was recommended by TechSoup and Microsoft, well, we could work on that in AI, right? But you'd have to tell us a couple of pieces of information. You'd have to communicate with us during the chat about it so that we could tailor it more for you. But we can do things like that.
Awesome. Well, you ladies have been fantastic. Doing the snaps and the claps for you. Thank you so much, Destiny and Kim, for being here. Thank you all for being here in the chat. Some great questions. Kevin, Matika, Janet in the background. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yep. See you next